first, I want to go to Hillary Mann Leverett in Washington, D.C. And Hillary has been a consistent voice on this program for months on this story. She is the author of Going to Tehran, Why America Must Accept the Islamic Republic of Iran. And Hillary, I understand that you have actually led negotiations before with the Iranian foreign minister. And let's just start with the basics here. In your assessment, is this a good deal or a bad deal for the U.S. and why?
I think it's a very good deal for two main reasons. The first is on proliferation. It would allow the United States, policymakers here, to turn to international inspectors and monitors, scientists, to really understand what's going on in Iran, instead of to the neoconservatives here in Washington and various other agenda-driven groups who told us falsely that Iraq, for example, had nuclear weapons to justify an invasion there. This would give us an objective basis to make decisions on. More profoundly, though, is the strategic importance, the strategic opportunity that this potential agreement could give the United States to get off of our incredibly self-damaging pursuit of war after war, failed military intervention after failed military intervention in the Middle East, especially since 9/11. This would give us the opportunity not to do that, to have a much more constructive relationship with all of the region's principal countries, and to lessen our dependency even on some of our allies who take policies that are often reckless for U.S. interests, whether that's the Israelis or the Saudis or others.
So let me play a portion of President Obama's weekly media address and get your response to that.
Today, the United States, together with our allies and partners, has reached a historic understanding with Iran, which, if fully implemented, will prevent it from obtaining a nuclear weapon. As President and Commander-in-Chief, I have no greater responsibility than the security of the American people. And I am convinced that if this framework leads to a final comprehensive deal, it will make our country, our allies, and our world safer.
Okay, so that wasn't a weekly media address. That was the president speaking on Thursday. But I hear him saying, and I wonder what your take is about this, I hear him saying this is about safety in terms of reducing nuclear weapons. And I'm wondering if there's something more complicated here, because if we lift economic sanctions in exchange for Iran ending its nuclear program, shouldn't we be worried that Iran, as a state sponsor of terrorism, would do a range of nefarious things with the additional billions of dollars in revenue?
Well, see, there are two routes, I think, that President Obama could go. One is the route that, for example, Nixon and Kissinger took with China, where it was a fundamental overhaul of the relationship, a real strategic realignment, an historic breakthrough that not only, I think, saved the United States from a fateful war with China, but allowed us to get out of the strategic quagmire of Vietnam and stop our military interventions in Asia, something incredibly beneficial for the United States. It enabled us to see China in different ways. We don't look at China today as our best buddy, but we look at it in an entirely different way than when we demonized them in the 50s and 60s. That's the chance that Obama has with Iran. But instead, I think he's pursuing more of a Jimmy Carter, President Carter-like approach when he negotiated the SALT II arms control agreement with the Soviet Union that failed. Congress killed it. Because if you can't look at your adversary in another way, there's no deal that would be good enough. There's no good deal that could be had with an evil Islamic Republic of Iran, just like Jimmy Carter found out with the Soviet Union when Congress killed SALT II. So I'm afraid that President Obama, unfortunately, is going potentially the President Carter route that leaves Iran as this demonized caricature in the American discourse. Because, in fact, today it's Iran that is fighting against ISIS. It is Iran that is fighting against Al-Qaeda. And it's our allies, for example, the Saudis, that are bombing in Yemen today, enabling Al-Qaeda to take over more and more territory there. It's the Saudis that just supported a group, an Al-Qaeda group, to take over yet another Syrian city. That's not going to end up well for the United States. We know where that trajectory goes. It leads to more and more war. He needs to make the strategic case, like Nixon and Kissinger did, about China.